She inherited the crooked house from her ex-husband, but what she found there changed her future. Rebecca Carter never imagined she would receive a letter from the courthouse with that news. At 32, she was living a simple life in Charlotte, working as an administrative assistant at a medical clinic, trying to rebuild her existence after the abandonment she suffered 5 years ago. That's when the courthouse official called to confirm if she was indeed Rebecca Carter Williams, ex-wife of Marcus Williams Bennett. The man's voice was formal as he explained that she had inherited a rural property in Asheville left by her deceased ex-husband. Rebecca almost dropped the phone. Marcus was deceased. And why on earth would she be the beneficiary of any inheritance from him? The letter that arrived 2 days later brought even more confusion. The address indicated a remote area of Asheville, on a dirt road she had never heard of. Marcus never mentioned owning rural properties during their 5 years of marriage. On the contrary, he always complained that he had no money for anything, that he was trying to find himself in life, that he needed time to grow professionally. Rebecca spent 3 nights without sleeping properly, remembering every detail of those last months of marriage. Marcus had become distant, irritable, always making excuses to leave the house. Until one Thursday morning, she woke up and found only a poorly written note on the kitchen table. "I can't explain now, but I need to leave. You deserve someone better." The attorney handling the estate was clear on the phone. The property had been registered in Marcus's name for 6 years, and the will left everything to her. There were no known debts, just the property, with a simple wooden house. Rebecca decided she needed to see for herself what Marcus had hidden from her for so long. The trip to Asheville took 2 hours on a sunny Saturday in March. Rebecca followed the GPS directions to where the paved road ended, then continued along a small dirt road full of potholes for another 20 minutes. With every curve she passed, the feeling of entering another world grew. When she finally reached the indicated address, Rebecca parked the car and watched through the windshield. In front of her was a wooden house that seemed to have been built decades ago. The structure was visibly leaning to the right, as if time and weight had overcome the resistance of the beams. The wooden boards were faded by the sun and rain, some loose, others cracked. Around the property grew trees that created a welcoming shade, but also gave the place an air of abandonment. There was a small shed in the back, some chickens pecking around the yard, and a feeling of silence that contrasted with the constant noise of the big city. Rebecca took a deep breath and got out of the car. The smell of grass, damp earth, and old wood filled her nostrils. It was a good smell, bringing back memories of childhood when she visited her grandparents' farm in Virginia. But it also brought a deep melancholy to think that Marcus had known this place and never shared it with her. She approached the wooden door painted in peeling blue, observing the details of the construction. The house really seemed to be giving way on one side, but there was still something charming about that imperfection. It was as if the structure had gained personality over time, each crack telling a story. Rebecca was about to knock on the door when she heard voices coming from inside the house. High-pitched voices, clearly from children. Her heart raced. Was someone living there? The attorney hadn't mentioned anything about tenants or squatters. She moved closer to the door, trying to listen better to the conversations. "Aunt Dorothy, the little one is crying again," said a young girl's voice. "Bring her here, I'll nurse her," replied an older, weary voice. "What if it's the fever? She felt warm last night," continued the first voice with genuine concern. Rebecca stood there motionless, unsure of what to do. Clearly, a family was living in the house that was now rightfully hers. But how to approach the situation? She knocked 3 times on the door gently. The silence that fell inside the house was absolute. Even the children stopped talking. Rebecca waited a few seconds and knocked again, a bit louder. "Who is it?" asked the young voice, now cautious. "My name is Rebecca. I was married to Marcus, the owner of this house," she replied, feeling strange saying those words. The door creaked open slowly on its old hinges. A girl of about 9 appeared in the crack, looking at Rebecca with a mix of curiosity and distrust. She had curly hair tied back with a simple elastic and wore a plain brown dress, clearly worn but clean. "Are you Marcus's wife?" asked the girl, opening the door a bit more. "Was," Rebecca corrected. trying to smile to reassure the child. "We hadn't been married for a few years." The girl nodded, as if that information made sense to her. She opened the door completely, and Rebecca could see the inside of the house for the first time. It was a simple space with old but well-kept furniture. The floor was wooden, some loose boards creaked when stepped on. There was a wooden table in the center, a few chairs around it, and a wood stove in one corner. But what caught Rebecca's attention most were the other children. She was counting mentally. The girl at the door, a boy of about 7 sitting in a chair, 2 girls who looked like twins around 5 years old, a little boy maybe 3, a slightly older girl who must have been about 6, and a baby in the arms of an elderly woman sitting in a rocking chair. "Mrs. Dorothy," called the girl at the door, "this lady is Marcus's wife." The elderly woman lifted her eyes to Rebecca. She must have been about 70, with white hair tied in a low bun, a face marked by time but with kind eyes. She wore a simple patterned dress and held carefully the baby, who couldn't have been more than a few months old. "Come in, my dear," said Mrs. Dorothy in a tired voice. "I've been expecting someone from his family to show up. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out." Now continuing, Rebecca entered the house slowly, observing every corner. The structure really was crooked. The floor slanted subtly to the right, and some walls weren't perfectly aligned. But despite the imperfections, there was something cozy about the place. The children watched her in silence, some with curious eyes, others clearly apprehensive. "Sit here," said Mrs. Dorothy, pointing to a nearby chair. "Would you like some coffee? I just made it." "Yes, thank you," replied Rebecca, still trying to process everything she was seeing. The older girl, who had opened the door, went to a makeshift stove and picked up an enamel mug. Rebecca noticed how naturally she moved around the kitchen, clearly familiar with the house's routine. "What's your name?" Rebecca asked the girl. "I'm Emma," the girl replied, pouring coffee into a mug. "These are my brothers and sisters." "Brothers and sisters?" Rebecca looked again at the group of children, now noticing that they didn't look physically alike. Mrs. Dorothy sighed deeply, adjusting the baby in her arms. "They're not blood siblings, but Marcus always said family is who takes care of you, not who gave birth to you. These children all arrived here at different times. Some were abandoned on the road, others brought by neighbors when their parents couldn't raise them anymore." The coffee was strong and warm. Rebecca drank it slowly, trying to organize her thoughts. Marcus had taken in 7 children. The man she knew seemed barely able to take care of himself, always complaining about responsibilities. "How long have you all lived here?" she asked. "I arrived first," said Emma, sitting in a chair across from Rebecca. "It's been 3 years. My mother had problems with alcohol and my father disappeared when I was little. A neighbor brought me here because she knew Marcus helped children in need." "And the others?" "Ethan," Emma pointed to the 7-year-old boy, "came later. His family had money problems and couldn't feed all their children. The twins Olivia and Ava came together. Their mother had depression after their father left and couldn't take proper care of them. Little Tommy over there," she indicated the small boy, "was found on a road, alone, crying. No one knows where he came from. Charlotte arrived last year. The grandparents who raised her passed away. And little one," Emma looked at the baby in Mrs. Dorothy's arms, "was left here in a basket 2 months ago, with a note saying her mother couldn't manage." Each story was a punch to Rebecca's stomach. How had Marcus built this parallel life without her knowing? And how did he manage to support so many children? During their marriage, he always complained about lack of money. "Marcus, did he take good care of you?" asked Rebecca, not knowing exactly how to phrase the question. "He was the best father in the world," replied Ethan, speaking for the first time. His voice was sweet, but there was a deep sadness in his eyes. "He always said we were special, that he had chosen us to form a different family." "Where is he now?" asked Olivia or Ava. Rebecca still couldn't tell the twins apart. Mrs. Dorothy and Rebecca exchanged glances. It was clear the children didn't know about Marcus's departure. The elderly lady subtly shook her head, indicating this conversation should be careful. "Marcus had to travel," said Rebecca, improvising. "That's why I came, to see how you all were doing." "He said he'd be back soon," commented Emma, but there was suspicion in her voice. "It's been 3 months since he left. He's never been away this long. 3 months. Marcus had passed away 3 months ago, according to the attorney." The timelines matched, but how to tell this to those children who clearly saw him as their father? Mrs. Dorothy stood up carefully, holding the baby. "Rebecca, could you accompany me outside? I wanted to show you the backyard," she said, in a tone that indicated they needed to talk privately. "Of course." They went out the back door, which led to a spacious backyard with some fruit trees and the vegetable garden Rebecca had seen from afar. The baby babbled happily in Mrs. Dorothy's arms. "My dear, I need to be clear with you," said the lady, sitting on an improvised bench made of logs. "I live next door. I've been taking care of these children since Marcus left, but I can't continue much longer." "Why not?" "I have heart problems. The doctor said I can't exert myself. Taking care of 7 children, including a baby, is slowly killing me. I was only holding on, waiting for someone from his family to show up." Rebecca sat beside her, feeling the weight of the situation falling on her shoulders. "Mrs. Dorothy, I didn't even know this place existed. Marcus never told me about the children, about this house, about anything." "He spoke of you," said the lady, looking at the horizon. "Always spoke of you. He said you were the kindest woman he'd ever known, that one day he'd bring you here to meet the family he'd built. Then why did he never bring me? Why did he leave without explaining anything?" Mrs. Dorothy let out a deep sigh. "I don't know, my dear. In recent months he'd been acting strange, very sad. He said he'd done wrong in his life and didn't deserve what he'd achieved. Once I heard him crying in his room, saying to himself that you deserved a better man than him." A knot formed in Rebecca's throat. Why hadn't Marcus talked to her about this? Why had he just disappeared? And now, what will happen to the children? That's the issue, my dear. They have nowhere to go. Emma's old enough to understand the situation, but the little ones, they think Marcus will return any moment, and I don't know how to tell them the truth. Rebecca looked at the baby Mrs. Dorothy was holding. The child had big dark eyes and smiled when Rebecca looked directly at her. Something stirred in her chest, a feeling she couldn't name. What happens if no one shows up to care for them? They'll have to go to shelters, but they'll probably be separated because it's hard to find a family willing to take so many children together. And these children love each other like true siblings. Separating them would be cruel. The weight of this information fell on Rebecca like a stone. 7 orphaned children who would be separated. A family that Marcus had built with love and that now depended on decisions she didn't even know she'd have to make. "Mrs. Dorothy, I need time to process all this. Can I stay here tonight? Sleep here, I mean." "Of course, my dear. Marcus's room is just as he left it, and this way you can get to know the children better, see how special they are." They went back inside the house. The children were still at the table, some playing with simple wooden toys, others just talking quietly among themselves. When Rebecca entered, they all looked at her expectantly. "Aunt Rebecca," said Emma, testing the address. "Are you staying here tonight?" "Yes, I am," Rebecca replied, noticing how the children's faces lit up. "Can I show you my drawing?" asked Charlotte, a shy 6-year-old girl who had spoken little since Rebecca arrived. "Of course you can." Charlotte ran to a corner of the house and returned with a yellowed sheet of paper where she'd drawn a house with coloured pencils. It was clearly the house they were in, slanted and all, but surrounded by many human figures of different sizes. "This is our family," Charlotte explained, pointing to each figure. "This is Daddy Marcus, this is me, this is Emma, this is Ethan, these are Olivia and Ava, this is little Tommy, this is little One, and this is Mrs. Dorothy." Rebecca studied the drawing carefully. Marcus was in the center, surrounded by the children, all smiling. It was a happy family captured on paper in a simple, pure way. "It's very beautiful," said Rebecca, genuinely moved. "Do you want me to draw you too?" asked Charlotte, her eyes shining. The question caught Rebecca off guard. Being included in the family drawing would mean taking a position regarding those children, and she still didn't know what that position would be. "We'll see about that later," she replied, stroking the girl's head. The day passed quickly. Rebecca observed the household routine. Emma helped Mrs. Dorothy prepare meals. Ethan looked after the younger ones. The twins were responsible for keeping the toys organized. Each child had their role, and it functioned like a real family. During lunch, which consisted of rice, beans, garden vegetables, and chicken from the backyard hens, Rebecca noticed how the children interacted with each other. There were small arguments, like in any family, but also much affection and mutual care. "Aunt Rebecca," said Ethan during the meal, "do you know any stories to tell? Daddy Marcus always told stories before bedtime. What kind of stories do you like?" "Princesses," shouted the twins at the same time. "Adventure," said Ethan. "About animals," added little Tommy. "How about a story about a princess who had adventures with animals?" suggested Rebecca, trying to please everyone. The children clapped excitedly. Rebecca improvised a story about a princess who got lost in the forest and was helped by different animals to find her way home. The children listened attentively, asking questions and suggesting directions for the narrative. At that moment, Rebecca realized how good she was feeling there. There was something about that crooked house, those children starved for love, that touched a part of her she didn't even know existed. Maybe it was the maternal instinct that had never surfaced during her marriage to Marcus, when they avoided talking about having children. In the afternoon, Mrs. Dorothy took her to see Marcus's room. It was a simple room, with a double bed, a wooden wardrobe, and a small desk. On the desk were scattered papers, bills, notes. "He always did the accounts here," explained Mrs. Dorothy. "He calculated exactly how much he spent on each child, how much he needed to save, how much food he could buy." Rebecca flipped through some papers. They were shopping lists, expense records, notes about each child's specific needs. "Emma needs new shoes." "Ethan has an earache. Take him to the doctor." "Twins are growing fast. Need bigger clothes." "How did he manage to support all this?" asked Rebecca. "He worked as a bricklayer in the city, did odd jobs on weekends, sold the chickens' eggs, sold vegetables from the garden. He also received a small government pension. I'm not sure what for. But he always found a way." Marcus, a bricklayer. During their marriage, he worked at a building materials store, but had never mentioned working as a bricklayer. How many things had he hidden from her? In a desk drawer, Rebecca found a shoebox. Inside were photos of the children at different times. Ethan learning to ride a bike, the twins playing in the garden, Emma helping build a chicken coop, little Tommy sleeping on a sofa, Charlotte drawing at the table. But what caught her attention the most were the letters. There was a bundle of envelopes tied with a string. All had the name Rebecca written on the front, but none had been sent. "Mrs. Dorothy, may I take these letters?" "Of course, my dear. I think he wanted you to read them." Rebecca put the letters in her bag. She still didn't feel ready to read them there in front of everyone. Dusk arrived with an orange sky typical of the New York countryside. The children ate the leftovers from lunch with pieces of bread that Mrs. Dorothy had made during the afternoon. After dinner, they all sat in the makeshift living room to listen to the stories Rebecca had promised. She told 3 different stories, one to please each age group. The younger children started yawning, and Emma automatically got up to organize bedtime. "Little Tommy sleeps with me and Ethan," she explained. "The twins sleep together in one bed, Charlotte sleeps with Mrs. Dorothy, and little one stays in the crib in Mrs. Dorothy's room." It was impressive how those children had organized themselves to share the small space of the house. Emma had clearly taken on the role of the responsible older sister, and the other children respected her leadership. "And where will I sleep?" asked Rebecca. "In Daddy Marcus's room," said Emma, as if it were obvious. "You're his wife, so you sleep in his room." Emma's childish logic made sense, but for Rebecca, sleeping in Marcus's room would be strange. At the same time, she didn't want to contradict the organization the children had made. "All right," she agreed. Mrs. Dorothy said goodbye, taking Charlotte and the baby to her house next door. The other children got ready for bed, brushing their teeth with water from a basin, putting on simple pajamas, arranging the beds. Rebecca watched everything with a mixture of admiration and sadness. Those children had learned to be independent too early, to take care of each other, to function as a family even without a traditional family structure. When everyone was lying down, Emma came to Rebecca. "Aunt Rebecca, can you say goodnight to everyone? Daddy Marcus always did that." Rebecca went from bed to bed saying goodnight to each child. Ethan naturally called her Aunt Rebecca. The twins asked for a kiss on the forehead. Little Tommy was almost asleep, but murmured a soft, "Thank you." When it was Emma's turn, the girl held her by the arm. "Aunt Rebecca, are you leaving tomorrow?" The question was loaded with fear. It was clear that Emma had seen many adults come and go from her life, and she was afraid Rebecca would be another one. "I don't know yet, Emma. I need to think about some things. If you leave, will you come back to visit?" "If I leave, I will come back," promised Rebecca, not knowing if she could keep it. Emma smiled and lay down. Within minutes, the whole house was silent, with only the natural sounds of the old wood creaking and the wind in the trees outside. Rebecca went to Marcus's room. It was strange to be there, touching his things, sleeping in his bed. But there was also something comforting about being surrounded by the belongings of someone who, despite everything, had been important in her life. She lay on the bed and opened the letters she had found. There were more than 20, written over 2 years. The first was dated 3 months after he had left the marriage. "Rebecca, I know you must be very angry with me, and you have every right to be. I know that leaving like that was cowardly, but I couldn't tell you the truth in person. I couldn't bear to see the disappointment in your eyes when you discovered what kind of man you had married. I lied to you about many things. I lied when I said I had no money. I had this house that I inherited from a distant uncle, and I was already living here when we met. I lied when I said I only worked at the store. I always worked as a construction worker too, doing renovations, building, earning well. But the worst of all, I lied when I said I didn't want to have children. The truth is that I already had children, not by blood, but in my heart. I was already taking care of Emma and Ethan when I married you, and I didn't have the courage to tell you because I knew it would change everything. You always said you wanted to get married, have a quiet life in the city, build a career. How could I explain that I lived in a crooked house in the middle of the woods, taking care of abandoned children? I know there's no excuse for the lie. I know I should have trusted you. But I was afraid of losing the love of my life because of a life I couldn't leave behind." Rebecca had to stop reading. The tears blurred her vision. Marcus had built a whole life based on lies, but at the same time the letters showed that he truly loved her, and that he was afraid she wouldn't accept the life he had chosen. She continued reading the other letters. In each one, Marcus talked about the children's growth, new challenges, how much he missed her. He also spoke of his guilt for lying, how he wanted to tell the truth but didn't know how. The second to last letter was different from the others. "Rebecca, I got some test results today. The doctor said it's lung cancer, quite advanced. He said I have at most 6 months if I don't treat it, a year if I treat it properly. At first I thought about looking for you, telling you everything, asking you to forgive me and help me with the children. But then I thought better of it. It would be too selfish of me. I've already hurt you too much with my cowardice. I can't just show up now because I need help. I decided to leave the house and the children in your name. I know you'll take good care of them. I know you're the most generous person I've ever met. The children will love you as I loved you, and you'll discover that being their mother will fulfill you in a way that being with me never could. If you're reading this letter, it's because I've already left. I ask forgiveness for all the lies, for all the cowardice, for all the suffering I caused. But I don't ask forgiveness for leaving you this wonderful family. They need you, and you need them, even if you don't know it yet. I love you forever, Marcus." Rebecca cried until she had no tears left. Marcus had gotten sick and faced it alone, without seeking help, without saying goodbye to her. And he had planned this whole situation so she would discover the children and become responsible for them. She was furious and moved at the same time. Furious about the manipulation, the lies, about him making decisions for her without consulting her, but moved by the love he showed for the children and the trust he had in leaving them in her care. The last letter was shorter. "Rebecca, if you changed your mind and don't want to keep the children, I understand. I know it's a lot of responsibility to put on someone. If you decide to leave, I just ask one thing. Find good families for each of them. Don't let them go to a public shelter. They deserve real love. In the drawer under the desk, there's some money saved to help with the initial expenses. It's not much, but it should last about 2 months. If you decide to stay, know that you're doing the most beautiful thing someone can do in life. Saving children that nobody else wants. Forever yours, Marcus. Rebecca got up and went to the drawer Marcus mentioned. There was a rusty can with money. It wasn't a large amount, but it would be enough to buy food for a few weeks. She returned to bed, but couldn't sleep. She lay in the dark thinking about everything she had discovered. Marcus had built an entire life based on lies, but he had also built a family based on true love. The children sleeping in the other rooms depended on her now. They hadn't chosen this situation, just as she hadn't chosen it. But they were all there, in that crooked house that seemed about to collapse, trying to figure out what to do with the life Marcus had left behind. Around 3 in the morning, Rebecca heard soft crying coming from another room. It was the baby. She got up to check. Mrs. Dorothy wasn't there. She had probably returned to her home after the children fell asleep. The baby was in the makeshift crib, crying softly. Rebecca picked her up, trying to soothe her. The child calmed down immediately, nestling in her arms as if recognizing her. "Shh, it's okay," murmured Rebecca, gently rocking. The baby looked at her with big, curious eyes. There was something hypnotic about that gaze, something that made Rebecca feel she was in the right place at the right time. "Your daddy Marcus left you with me," she whispered to the baby. "I don't know yet what we're going to do, but as long as I'm here, you won't need anything." The baby babbled something and fell back asleep in Rebecca's arms. She stood there motionless for almost an hour, just holding the child, thinking about life. When she went to put the baby back in the crib, Emma appeared in the bedroom doorway. "Aunt Rebecca, are you okay?" "I'm fine, Emma." The little one was crying. I came to soothe her. "Can you do that? Take care of a baby, I mean." "I think I can learn," replied Rebecca, surprising herself. "Daddy Marcus always said that taking care of children is like riding a bike. At first it seems hard, but then it becomes natural." Emma returned to her room and Rebecca went back to Marcus's bed. This time she managed to sleep a little until she was awakened by the sounds of children getting ready for breakfast. When she left the room, she found the house in motion. Emma was preparing a simple breakfast. Ethan was helping the younger children get dressed. The twins were setting the table. It was a well-rehearsed routine where everyone knew exactly what to do. "Good morning, Aunt Rebecca," the children greeted almost in chorus. "Good morning, everyone." Mrs. Dorothy arrived with the baby already dressed and fed. "Did you sleep well, my dear?" So, admitted Rebecca. "I found Marcus's letters. Now I understand the situation better." "Ah, the letters. He was always writing letters to you. He said he would send them all one day, but he never did." Breakfast was simple but tasty. Homemade bread, butter, milk from the neighborhood cows, eggs from the property's chickens. It was real food, healthy, made with care. "Aunt Rebecca," Ethan said during breakfast, "are you going to take us to school today?" "You go to school?" "Emma and I go to school in the city," he explained. "The twins go to the neighborhood school nearby. Charlotte doesn't go to school yet, because she has to take care of little Tommy and little one. But Daddy Marcus said she'll start next year." Rebecca realized she hadn't thought about the school issue. If she decided to take responsibility for the children, she would have to understand all the logistics of their lives, school, doctor, food, clothes, everything. "How do you usually get to school?" "There's a bus that passes on the road at 7 in the morning, Emma explained. "Daddy Marcus always took us to the bus stop by bicycle." "And today, how will you manage?" "Mrs. Dorothy said she would take us on foot. It takes longer, but we can make it." Rebecca looked at her watch. It was already past 6:30. "What time do you have to be at the stop?" 7 sharp, said Ethan, getting up from the table. "It's time already." "Wait," said Rebecca, surprising everyone. "I'll take you by car." The children looked at each other in surprise. Emma hesitated. "Are you sure?" "We don't want to be a bother." "It's no bother at all. Come on, grab your backpacks." Ethan and Emma ran to get their school backpacks, simple but organized bags with notebooks and pencils. Rebecca accompanied them to the car, feeling the curious gazes of the other children who stayed behind. The bus stop was on the main road, About a 15-minute walk from the house. By car, they arrived in 3 minutes. "Thank you, Aunt Rebecca," said Emma, getting out of the car. "Thank you," repeated Ethan. "What time do you come back?" "The bus passes at 5 in the afternoon," Emma replied. "Then I'll come pick you up at 5. "You don't have to." "I want to," interrupted Rebecca, and she realized she meant it. On the way back to the house, she thought about how natural it had felt to offer help to the children. During her marriage to Marcus, she always avoided commitments that involved taking care of other people. But there, in that situation, helping seemed the most obvious thing to do. When she got back, she found Mrs. Dorothy organizing the younger children for a bath. "Rebecca, can you help me with little one? She only calms down when she's held, and my back is hurting today." Rebecca took the baby in her arms again. The child smiled at her, babbling happy sounds. "Mrs. Dorothy, I need to ask you something. If I don't stay, what exactly happens to the children?" She stopped what she was doing and sat in a chair. "We'll have to call Child Protective Services. They'll assess each child's situation and look for families or institutions. But as I said yesterday, it's very difficult to find someone who will take so many children together." "And if I stay, how do I make it legal?" "That's more complicated. You need to file for custody, prove you have the financial and emotional means to care for them. Marcus never legalized their situation, just took care of them informally." Rebecca rocked the baby in her arms, thinking about the implications. Taking on 7 children wasn't just an emotional decision, it was a legal, financial commitment for the rest of her life. How long does this custody process take? It can take months, and during that time they would have to be in a temporary situation, probably separated. The thought of seeing those children separated caused physical pain in Rebecca. In just 1 day together, she could already see how much they loved and took care of each other. "Mrs. Dorothy, I need to go back to Charlotte this afternoon to sort out some work things. Can I leave the children with you for a few more days?" "Yes, my dear, but don't take too long to decide because my health isn't good." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Rebecca spent the rest of the morning observing the routine of the younger children. Little Tommy played with wooden toys that Marcus had probably made. The twins, Olivia and Ava, helped Charlotte take care of a small vegetable garden in the backyard. Every activity was done in an organized way, as if they had learned to cooperate to make everything work. Around noon, a neighbor Rebecca hadn't met arrived. She was a woman in her 50s, brunette, with simple but clean clothes. "Mrs. Dorothy, I brought some vegetables from my garden for the children," she said, handing over a bag. "Who is the young lady?" "This is Linda, the neighbor next door," introduced Mrs. Dorothy. "Linda, this is Rebecca, Marcus's ex-wife." Linda looked Rebecca up and down, with an expression mixing curiosity and suspicion. "Oh, so it's you. Marcus talked about you a lot. He always said you were from the big city, had an organized life." "That's true," confirmed Rebecca, not quite sure how to interpret the woman's tone. "And now, are you taking the children to the city?" The question was direct, almost aggressive. Rebecca realized there was a tension there she didn't fully understand. "I'm still deciding what to do." Grumbled Linda. "I hope you're not going to abandon these children like many people do. They've already suffered too much." There was an implicit accusation in Linda's words, as if she had already judged Rebecca as someone who couldn't be trusted. "Linda," interrupted Mrs. Dorothy, with a gentle, reproachful tone, "Rebecca is just learning about the situation. It's not easy to make such a decision overnight." "Of course it's not easy," agreed Linda, but without reducing the hostility. "But Marcus trusted her for some reason. I hope he wasn't mistaken." After Linda left, Rebecca asked Mrs. Dorothy about the neighbor's reaction. "Don't mind her, my dear. Linda is a good person, but she's very protective of the children. She helped Marcus many times when he had to travel for work. She seems to dislike me. It's just that Linda has seen many people promise to help these children and then disappear. She's afraid you'll do the same." Rebecca understood the concern. To those people, she was a stranger from the big city who had appeared out of nowhere. It was natural for them to distrust her intentions. In the afternoon, She went to pick up Emma and Ethan from school as promised. The children were clearly surprised to see the car parked at the bus stop. "You really came," said Emma with a shy smile. "I said I would," replied Rebecca. On the way back, Ethan talked about his math class. Emma talked about a science project she was doing on plants. It was normal chatter of children coming home from school, but for Rebecca, it was a new and strangely pleasant experience. "Aunt Rebecca," said Emma as they were arriving home, "are you leaving today?" "I need to go back to Charlotte to sort some things out, but I'll be back in a few days." "Do you promise?" the girl insisted. "I promise." When they got home, Rebecca gathered all the children in the living room. "Everyone, I need to go back to my house today, but I'll be back here on Friday." It was Tuesday. "You'll stay with Mrs. Dorothy, and I want you to be very obedient and take care of yourselves, okay?" "Are you really coming back?" asked Charlotte in a small voice. "Yes, I am coming back, and when I return, we'll talk about many important things." Rebecca said goodbye to each child individually. Some just waved, others asked for a hug. When it was the baby's turn, she held her for a while, trying to memorize the child's scent, weight, and warmth. "Take good care of her for me," she said to Emma, handing over the baby. "I will, Aunt Rebecca." The trip back to Charlotte was a whirlwind of thoughts. Rebecca couldn't stop thinking about the children's faces, Marcus's letters, the responsibility that had fallen on her shoulders. When she arrived at her small but organized apartment in the city, everything seemed different. The silence that was once relaxing now felt empty. The order that once calmed her now seemed cold. She called her supervisor at the medical clinic, explained that an urgent family situation had come up and that she would need a few days to resolve it. Fortunately, her supervisor was understanding and authorized a week of unpaid leave. On Tuesday night, Rebecca spent hours researching online about adoption processes, child custody, rights, and responsibilities. She discovered that the situation would be much more complex than she had imagined. Each child would have to undergo an individual evaluation. She would have to prove income, emotional stability, and adequate housing conditions. Even more complicated, she lived in a one-bedroom apartment. Even if she could get custody of the children, there would be no way to house them in the city. She would have to move to the house in the countryside and start her life completely over. On Wednesday, she visited a lawyer specializing in family law. The professional was straightforward. 7 children is a very high number for an individual custody case. Normally, the judiciary prefers to distribute them among several families to reduce the risk of overload. You would have to prove very convincingly that you can provide stability for all of them. And how do I prove that? Stable income, adequate housing, community support, a favorable psychological evaluation. And even then, since none of the children are biologically related to you, the process could be contested if any interested relative appears. Rebecca left the lawyer's office more worried than when she entered. It seemed that even wanting to help, there would be huge bureaucratic obstacles. On Thursday, she began researching the possibility of working in Asheville. She found that there were some clinics that might need administrative assistance, but the salaries were lower than what she earned in Charlotte. She also did some financial calculations. With the apartment rent, it would be impossible to support 7 children. She would have to sell her few assets, use the savings she had set aside, and even then, she wasn't sure the money would last. But what bothered her most wasn't the practical difficulties. It was the memory of the children's eyes, especially Emma asking if she would really come back. It was the feeling of the baby sleeping in her arms. It was the image of that makeshift family having breakfast together in the crooked house. On Friday morning, Rebecca packed a suitcase with clothes for several days and returned to Asheville. She had made a decision. She would spend at least 2 weeks living with the children before making any final decision. She needed to truly understand what taking on that responsibility would mean. When she arrived at the crooked house around noon, she heard joyful shouts coming from the backyard. "Aunt Rebecca is back!" shouted little Tommy, running toward her. Within seconds, she was surrounded by all the children, each talking at once, sharing news, asking for attention. The baby stretched her little arms toward her from Emma's lap. "I missed you," Rebecca said, realizing it was completely true. Mrs. Dorothy appeared at the door, smiling. "They've been counting the days for you to return," she said, "especially Emma. She was worried you wouldn't keep your promise." "I always keep my promises," Rebecca replied, looking directly at Emma. During lunch, the children recounted everything that had happened during the 3 days she was away. Ethan had gotten a good grade on a test. The twins had helped Linda plant seedlings. Charlotte had learned to hang clothes on the line. Little Tommy had found a colourful caterpillar in the yard. They were simple stories of children living their routine, but to Rebecca each account mattered. She found herself asking questions, genuinely interested in the details of their lives. After lunch, she asked to speak with Emma in private. "Emma, I need to ask you a serious question, and I want you to be very honest with me." The girl took on a worried expression. "If I decide to stay here and take care of you all, is that what you really want? Or would you rather I help find other families for each of you?" Emma thought for a long time before answering. "Aunt Rebecca, I've lived with other families before coming here. Some were good, others not so much. But here is different. Here I'm not the orphan child someone accepted. Here I'm Ethan's sister, the twins' sister, little Tommy's sister, Charlotte's sister, little one's sister. We're a real family. And if I can't take good care of you, if it's too hard, Dad Marcus always said that real family doesn't give up on each other. If it gets hard, we help figure it out. If you really try, we'll try too." Emma's maturity was impressive and at the same time sad. A 9-year-old shouldn't have to think about such complex issues. "And if a family appears that wants to adopt you, a family just for you," Emma shook her head with determination. "I don't want a family just for me. I want my whole family together. And if you can't stay, then I'd rather we stay together as long as we can, even if it's hard." That afternoon, Rebecca had a long conversation with Mrs. Dorothy about the practical aspects of caring for the children. The lady explained each one's routine, medication times for those who needed them, foods each child didn't like, individual fears and habits. "Emma has nightmares sometimes because of the bad things she went through before," explained Mrs. Dorothy. "When that happens, she needs someone to sit on her bed until she falls back asleep. Ethan is very proud. He doesn't like to ask for help when he's struggling in school, so you have to keep an eye out. The twins fight a lot with each other, but if someone picks on one, the other turns fierce to defend her. Each child had their own personality, their specific needs, their history of suffering that needed to be cared for with tenderness. It was much more complex than simply providing a house and food. And the money. How did Marcus manage to support so many children?" "He worked very hard," replied Mrs. Dorothy. "He got up at 5 in the morning, worked in construction all day, sometimes did odd jobs at night and on weekends. He also raised chickens, sold eggs, grew vegetables, and sold them at the market. And he was always struggling, you know, there was almost nothing left." Rebecca did the math in her head. Even working a lot, it would be hard to support such a large family on just her administrative assistant's salary. That night, after the children had fallen asleep, Rebecca went through Marcus's papers again, trying to better understand the financial situation. She found notes about monthly expenses, low electricity because they used an oil lamp, well water in the backyard, food mostly from their own produce, clothes bought at thrift stores or donated by neighbors. Marcus had created a very frugal lifestyle, but it required knowledge of farming, raising animals, and constant work that Rebecca didn't have. In the bottom drawer of the desk, she found something she hadn't seen before, documents about an inheritance. Marcus had inherited not only the house from a distant uncle, but also a small plot of land in the city of Asheville. The land apparently had some value because there were purchase offers filed there. Rebecca studied the documents carefully. The land was in an area that was gaining value because of a new planned neighborhood. The purchase offers were for considerable amounts, not enough to make someone rich, but enough to provide financial stability for a few years. She realized that Marcus had probably kept this information as an emergency fund for the children. If she sold the land, Rebecca would be able to settle in the area and support the family for a while as she got herself organized professionally. On Saturday morning, she went with some of the children to the city to get to know Asheville better. She took Emma and Ethan, who knew the area well, and could show her the schools, the health clinic, and the job options. Asheville was a small but organized town. There were a few clinics, 2 public schools, a small hospital and basic commerce. Emma and Ethan proudly showed her the places they frequented, the stores where Marcus sometimes took them, the square where they played on Sundays. "It's a good place to live," said Ethan. "Everyone knows each other, the teachers are nice, and when someone gets sick, everyone helps." Rebecca realized the children had real ties to that community. It wouldn't be fair to uproot them from there to try for a life in the big city. During the afternoon, an unexpected situation changed the course of her thoughts. They were playing in the backyard when a car pulled up to the property. A woman around 40 years old, well-dressed, got out, accompanied by a man in a suit. "Good afternoon," the woman said, addressing Rebecca. "I'm Victoria Williams, Marcus's sister. This is my lawyer, Attorney Richard." Rebecca's stomach dropped. Marcus's sister, the one the letters mentioned, who had rejected her brother when he decided to care for orphaned children. "I heard my brother passed away and left the property to you," Victoria continued in a cold tone. "I came to talk about this situation." The children, who had been playing happily, fell silent, watching the adults talk. Emma instinctively moved closer to Rebecca, as if needing protection. "Let's talk inside," said Rebecca, trying to stay calm. They headed to the living room. Victoria looked around with a disapproving expression, clearly bothered by the simplicity and state of the house. "Attorney Richard, can you explain the legal situation to her?" asked Victoria. The lawyer opened a briefcase and took out some documents. "Ms. Rebecca, although there is a will leaving the property in your name, there is an important legal matter to consider. Since Mr. Marcus was not officially married to you at the time the will was made, and considering there are direct bloodline heirs, the validity of this will can be contested." "What does that mean exactly?" asked Rebecca, trying to understand the legal terms. "It means the immediate family has the right to challenge this inheritance in court," replied Victoria. "And frankly, it doesn't seem to me that my brother was in the proper psychological condition when he made this decision." "Psychological condition?" Rebecca became irritated. "He was perfectly lucid. He just decided to leave the house to who he believed would care for the children." Victoria looked toward the children in the living room, trying to pretend they were playing but clearly paying attention to the conversation. "Oh yes, the children. Another problematic issue. My brother didn't have legal authorization to care for these children. Technically, this is irregular before the state." Mrs. Dorothy, who had remained silent until then, stood up from her chair. "Excuse me, miss," she said, addressing Victoria, "but I knew your brother for over 5 years. He was the most dedicated and loving man I've ever seen. These children were his life." "I'm sure he meant well," Victoria replied condescendingly. "But good intentions don't solve legal matters. These children should be under official state care, not in a house that's literally falling apart." Emma stood up from where she was sitting. "Our house is not falling apart," she said firmly, "and Daddy Marcus took care of us better than any shelter." "Emma," Rebecca tried to calm the girl, but she kept speaking. "You didn't even know Daddy Marcus. He always said he had a sister who didn't like him, who didn't understand what being a real family means." Victoria was visibly bothered by the child's words. "Attorney Richard, I think this is enough to demonstrate the irregularity of the situation. Aggressive children, a house in poor condition, questionable legal status." The lawyer made some notes and addressed Rebecca. "Ms. Rebecca, I'll be direct. My client has legal grounds to contest both the inheritance and the children's situation. If this goes to court, it's very likely the property will be directed to the blood relatives, and the children will be sent to appropriate institutions." "And what do you want?" Rebecca asked directly. Victoria and the lawyer exchanged looks. "We want to resolve this as amicably as possible," said Victoria. "I'm willing to buy your share of the inheritance for a fair price. That way you come out of the situation without losses, and I get the property that rightfully belongs to the family. And the children? The children will be referred to the proper authorities, who will find suitable homes for each." "Separate homes," Rebecca added. "Well, it's difficult to find a family that will take so many children at once," Victoria admitted, "but each will have a chance at having a real family." Emma began to cry silently. Ethan stood up and put his arm around his older sister. The twins moved closer too, as if instinctively knowing they needed to protect each other. "I need time to think," said Rebecca. "Of course," agreed Attorney Richard, "but not too much time. If we don't resolve this amicably soon, we'll have to proceed with legal measures." After Victoria and the lawyer left, the house fell silent. The children were clearly frightened, though they tried not to show it. "Aunt Rebecca," said Charlotte in a small voice, "are we going to have to leave?" "I don't know yet, sweetheart," Rebecca answered honestly. "But I'll do everything I can to prevent that." Emma approached her. "Aunt Rebecca, if you can't keep us, can you at least try to make sure we're not separated? We're a family. We don't want different families." Emma's plea broke Rebecca's heart. How do you explain to a 9-year-old that the adult world doesn't always work in the way that would be most fair? That night, after the children had gone to sleep, Rebecca had a long conversation with Mrs. Dorothy. "What do you think I should do?" "My dear, that Victoria has always been jealous of Marcus. When they were young, she wanted him to drop everything and go work at her husband's company in New York. She was furious when he chose to stay here, taking care of what she called other people's children. But she's right about the legal issue. I have no official rights over the children." "Yes, you do," said Mrs. Dorothy firmly. "You have the rights that love gives. You have the rights that Marcus's trust gave you. And you have the rights that these children are giving you, accepting you as family. But that doesn't count in court. It may not count in court, but it counts in real life. And real life is more important than stamped paper." Rebecca stayed up all night thinking about possibilities. By morning, she had made a decision. She gathered the children at the breakfast table. "Everyone, I'm going to tell you exactly what's happening, because you have the right to know. Marcus's sister wants to take the house and wants you to be taken to different shelters." The children exchanged worried glances, but Rebecca continued, "But I won't let that happen. I'll fight for you, for our family. It might be hard, it might take time, but I won't give up." "What does that mean?" asked Ethan. "It means I'll sell my things in Charlotte, move here permanently, and we'll face any difficulties that come up together. Are you in?" The silence that followed was broken by Emma. "Do you mean you'll be our real mother?" "I mean I already am," replied Rebecca, surprising herself with her own answer. Breakfast turned into a celebration. The children seemed to have a huge weight lifted off their shoulders. For the first time since she had arrived there, Rebecca saw true hope in their eyes, but she knew there was a tough battle ahead. She needed legal help. She needed to legalize the children's situation. She needed to find a stable source of income, and she needed to do all this while Victoria and her lawyer were pushing to speed up the process. On Monday, Rebecca went to Asheville to look for a lawyer who could represent her. She was recommended to a small office where an attorney named Attorney Jennifer worked, specializing in family law and known for taking on complex cases even when clients didn't have much money. Attorney Jennifer was a woman of about 45 with graying hair, a direct but welcoming manner. She listened to Rebecca's entire story without interrupting. "Your situation is indeed complex," she said, after reviewing the documents. "But it's not impossible. We have a few points in our favor." "What are they?" "First, Marcus's will is valid, regardless of his sister's opinion. Second, the children have been well cared for and integrated into the community for years. Third, you're willing to take on the responsibility officially. And fourth, which might be the most important, the judiciary prefers to keep children in stable families rather than sending them to institutions." "And what are the difficulties?" "The main one is proving that you have the financial and emotional means to care for 7 children. We'll need psychological reports, proof of income, a home assessment, community references." "And how long does it take?" "If all goes well, about 6 months. If the other side creates obstacles, it could take over a year." "And during that time?" "During that time, the children will be in a temporary situation, ideally with you, but if the other side challenges that, they might have to go temporarily to foster families or shelters." Rebecca felt her blood run cold. The thought of seeing the children taken from the only home they'd ever known was unbearable. "Attorney Jennifer, I'll be honest about my financial situation. I don't have much money. Can I pay your fees in installments? Rebecca, I'm going to propose something. I'll take your case for a symbolic fee, and if you win, you can supplement my fees with whatever you can manage. This kind of situation touches me personally, and I believe these children deserve to fight for themselves. On her way back home, Rebecca stopped at the bank to check her financial situation. She had some money in savings, enough for a few months of basic expenses. If she sold her furniture and appliances from the apartment in Charlotte, she could get a bit more money. But what reassured her most was knowing that Marcus had left documents about the land. If necessary, she could sell the land to have resources during the legal battle. When she got home, she encountered a situation she hadn't expected. Linda, the neighbor who had been hostile to her during their first meeting, was in the house talking with Mrs. Dorothy and the children. "Rebecca," called Mrs. Dorothy, "Linda came to speak with you." Linda stood up and approached her with a serious expression. "Rebecca, I heard that Marcus's sister showed up here trying to cause trouble with the children. It's true. Then I came to say something. You can count on me. I know I was a bit rude to you at first, but I've seen many people promise the world to these children and then disappear. But after talking with Mrs. Dorothy and with the children themselves, I understood that you're different. Thank you, Linda. That means a lot to me. It's not just words. If you need a witness in court, if you need someone to watch the children while you handle bureaucratic matters, if you need any practical help, just call. Marcus was like a brother to me, and these children are like my nieces and nephews." For the first time since Marcus's sister had appeared, Rebecca felt less alone in the battle that lay ahead. That night she decided to have an honest conversation with Emma about the whole situation. The girl already showed enough maturity to understand the difficulties they would face. "Emma, I want you to understand something. The next few weeks might be difficult. Strangers might come here asking questions. You might have to go to court. I might have to travel several times to handle bureaucratic matters. We understand, Aunt Rebecca. Dad Marcus always said that the good things in life require fighting for. But I need you to promise me one thing. If at any point you think it would be better for you to have a different life, a different family, you tell me. I don't want to force you into a situation that isn't good for you." Emma thought for a moment. "Aunt Rebecca, do you remember when you first arrived here and asked my name, and I said we were siblings? I remember. We weren't siblings by blood, but we were siblings by choice. Dad Marcus taught us that true family is who we choose to love and who chooses to love us back. Did you choose to love us? I did. Then we're true family, and true family doesn't give up on each other when things get hard." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. On Tuesday, Rebecca began the process of moving permanently to Asheville. She went to Charlotte, spoke with her boss about resigning, arranged to sell her furniture, and terminated her apartment lease. It was an emotionally difficult process. That apartment had been her home for 5 years, the place where she had rebuilt her life after Marcus abandoned her. Getting rid of it meant closing a chapter for good, but at the same time, there was something liberating about leaving behind the lonely life she had led in the big city. In the last few days spending time with the children, she had discovered a version of herself she didn't know. More generous, more patient, stronger. On Wednesday, she returned to the house in the countryside with all her clothes and personal belongings. The children welcomed her as if she were a heroine returning from war. "Is Aunt Rebecca going to live with us forever now?" asked little Tommy. "Forever," she confirmed, and for the first time she said it with complete conviction. During the following days, she dedicated herself to understanding every aspect of that family's life in depth. She woke up early to help prepare breakfast, took and picked up the children from school, helped with homework, joined in the games, the fights, the daily discoveries. She discovered that Ethan struggled with math, but was excellent at writing. That the twins, Olivia and Ava, despite being physically identical, had completely different personalities. Olivia was a dreamer and loved to draw. Ava was practical and loved to help in the kitchen. That Charlotte was extremely intelligent, but too shy to show it. That little Tommy had nightmares about a previous time that no one really knew about, and she discovered that the baby, whom she had started calling Hope, specifically responded to her voice, her lap, her affection, as if recognizing that she would be her mother. On Friday, Attorney Richard, Victoria's lawyer, called to inform her that they had filed the legal proceedings contesting the inheritance. They had also contacted Child Protective Services to evaluate the children's situation. What does this mean in practice? Rebecca asked Attorney Jennifer. It means that we will probably have an official visit next week to assess the home and the children. It's essential that everything is organized, the children well cared for, the house clean, and you are prepared to answer questions. What kind of questions? About your income, your plans for supporting the children, your experience with childcare, your knowledge of each child's specific needs. They will want to make sure you are not taking on a greater responsibility than you can handle. Rebecca spent the weekend organizing the house as best as possible. Linda came to help, bringing some neighbors who also knew the children well. It was a collective effort of cleaning, organizing, and small repairs. "The house isn't even that crooked after all," joked one of the neighbors. "It's just a matter of perspective." On Sunday afternoon, Rebecca gathered the children to talk about the visit they would receive. "Everyone, next week some people will come here to see our home and talk with you. They are people who work taking care of children and want to make sure you are doing well." "Is it like a test?" asked Ethan. "It's similar, but it's not a test of you, it's a test of me. They want to know if I can take good care of you." "And if they think you can't?" asked Olivia or Ava. "Then we'll have to prove them wrong," Rebecca replied. "That's why I need you to be natural, tell the truth, but show how we are a happy family here." "We really are a happy family," said Charlotte. "It's not a lie." "It really isn't a lie," Rebecca agreed. On Monday morning, 2 social workers, a psychologist, and a city official arrived. There were 4 people to assess if a crooked house in the middle of the woods was suitable for housing 7 children and 1 adult. The visit lasted almost 4 hours. They measured the rooms, checked the water and electrical conditions, examined the kitchen, the bathrooms, the bedrooms. They asked questions about the children's routine, about food, education, health. They spoke individually with each child, asking about their feelings, their needs, their dreams. Rebecca grew anxious during these conversations, not knowing exactly what the children were answering. When the technical part was over, the psychologist asked to speak with Rebecca in private. "Rebecca, I need to ask some direct questions. Why did you decide to take responsibility for 7 children who aren't biologically yours?" "Because they needed someone and I grew attached to them," Rebecca answered honestly. "Do you have experience with childcare?" "Not formally, but I'm learning every day and I have help from experienced neighbors." "How do you plan to support them financially?" "I'm looking for work in the area. I also have some savings and assets I can sell if necessary." "Do you understand that raising 7 children is a huge responsibility that will last many years, that will completely affect your personal life?" "I understand, and I accept that responsibility consciously." "Why?" The question was simple, but the answer wasn't easy to explain. "Because for the first time in my life I feel truly useful. Because these children taught me what unconditional love is. Because when I look at them, I see potential, I see hope, I see a future. And because Marcus trusted me, and I don't want to let him down or let them down." The psychologist wrote down her answers without showing what she thought about them. When the team left, Rebecca was exhausted and anxious. There was no way to know if the evaluation had been positive or negative. "How did it go, Aunt Rebecca?" asked Emma. "Now we just have to wait," she replied. "But I was proud of all of you. You behaved very well." On Tuesday, Attorney Jennifer called with news. "Rebecca, I received the preliminary report from the visit. It's not official yet, but I can say it was quite positive. They were impressed with the bond between you and the children, with the mutual affection, with the organization of the house, despite the structural limitations. And what's the next step? Now they'll make a full report and send it to the judge, but Victoria and her lawyer will also have the right to challenge this report. How? They can request a new evaluation. They can question your financial capability. They can argue that the children would be better off in separate families. The legal battle is just beginning. That same afternoon, Rebecca made a decision she had been considering for days. She went to the Asheville notary's office and started the process of selling the land that Marcus had left. Even though the inheritance was being contested, the land was registered in Marcus's name, and as his widow she had rights to the assets. Selling the land would give her financial resources to support the family for at least a year, enough time to find a stable source of income and prove her ability to provide. On Wednesday, something happened that completely changed the course of the situation. Rebecca was in town taking care of bureaucratic matters when Mrs. Dorothy called urgently. "Rebecca, come home quickly. Victoria showed up here with 2 women who say they're from Child Protective Services. They want to take the children." Rebecca felt her world collapsing. She dropped everything she was doing and rushed home, driving as fast as she could without causing an accident. When she arrived, she found a scene that made her furious. Victoria was in the living room with 2 uniformed women, while the children were huddled in a corner, clearly frightened. Emma was holding the baby in her lap and trying to comfort the younger children who were crying. "What's going on here?" Rebecca asked in a firm voice. "Rebecca," said Victoria with a false tone of concern, "these are Child Protective Services workers. They came to take the children to temporary foster homes while the legal situation isn't resolved." "That's a lie," shouted Emma, still holding the baby. "Aunt Rebecca takes good care of us. Children, let's gather your things," said one of the women with authority. "Wait," interrupted Rebecca. "I want to see official documents authorizing this." "Ma'am," replied the other woman, "we have a temporary court order. The children are in an irregular situation and need to be removed until things are clarified." Rebecca took the documents to examine them. It was indeed signed by a judge, authorizing the children's removal for temporary placement. "This can't be right," she said, grabbing the phone to call Attorney Jennifer. "Rebecca," said Victoria, "I know it's difficult, but this is temporary. When everything is clarified, if you really have the means, you can get in line to officially adopt them." "In line?" repeated Rebecca, incredulous. "Of course. There are several families interested in adoption. You'll have to compete like any other interested party." Attorney Jennifer answered the phone and quickly listened to the situation. "Rebecca, this is irregular. They can't remove the children without a specific order based on proven risk. I'll verify if this documentation is valid. Meanwhile, don't let them take the children." "How do I stop them?" whispered Rebecca into the phone. "Demand to see detailed documents. Ask to check the authenticity of the court order. Buy time until I get there." Rebecca positioned herself between the workers and the children. "I won't allow you to take these children until my lawyer confirms the validity of these documents." "Ma'am, you're obstructing a court order," said one of the women. "I'm protecting children from a potential irregularity," retorted Rebecca. The situation became tense. The children were crying. Victoria was visibly irritated. The supposed workers pressed to execute the order. That's when Linda arrived with 3 more neighbors. "Rebecca, Mrs. Dorothy told us what's happening," said Linda. "We came to support you." "This is a private matter," said Victoria. "We don't need an audience." "When they mess with these children, they mess with the whole community," replied one of the neighbors. "We've known these children for years. We know they're well cared for." 15 minutes later, Attorney Jennifer arrived, accompanied by a court officer. "Where are the documents?" she asked directly. The supposed workers handed over the papers. Attorney Jennifer analyzed them carefully and then checked something on her phone. "This court order is fake," she stated categorically. "The case number doesn't exist in the system, and the judge's signature is visibly forged." "What do you mean fake?" asked Rebecca. "It means these people aren't Child Protective Services workers, and this operation is completely illegal." The court officer approached the 2 women. "I'll need you to identify yourselves and come with me to give statements." Victoria turned pale. It was clear she had hired people to pretend to be official workers and try to take the children with fake documents. "I didn't know the documents were fake," she said desperately. "These women approached me saying they could help resolve the situation quickly." "Victoria," said Attorney Jennifer severely, "attempted kidnapping of minors is a serious crime. I'll advise Rebecca to file a police report against everyone involved." After the commotion, when all the strangers had left, Rebecca gathered the children around her. "Everything's okay now," she said, hugging as many children as she could hold at once. "No one is taking you away from me." "Aunt Rebecca," said little Tommy in a small voice, "are you sure they won't come back?" "I'm sure. And now that we know what Marcus's sister is capable of, we'll be prepared for anything." Emma approached her with the baby in her arms. "Aunt Rebecca, can we call you Mum? I know you're not our birth mother, but you're our mother in our hearts." Rebecca took the baby in her arms and looked at each of the children. "You can call me whatever you want, because that's exactly what I am. Your mother by love, by choice, forever." The following weeks were spent in intense preparation for the official court proceedings. Attorney Jennifer worked on organizing all the necessary documentation, collecting statements from neighbors, and compiling medical and psychological reports for the children. The attempted kidnapping had significantly strengthened Rebecca's case. Victoria lost credibility before the court, and the judge began questioning her true motivations. Rebecca also started working as an administrative assistant at a veterinary clinic in Asheville. The salary wasn't high, but together with the money from the land sale, it was enough to support the family in a simple yet dignified way. The house underwent minor renovations to fix the most serious structural problems. It still wasn't perfect, but it was safe and cozy. The court proceedings lasted another 4 months. There were hearings, evaluations, testimonies, and expert assessments. Rebecca had to repeatedly prove her ability to care for the children, her emotional stability, and her financial situation. The children had to testify about their feelings, their wishes regarding who they wanted as their legal guardian. They were all unanimous. They wanted to stay with Rebecca. They wanted to remain a family. The final decision came on a cold July morning. Attorney Jennifer called to announce, "Rebecca, we won. The judge ruled in your favor. The inheritance is valid, and you have the right to request permanent custody of the children." When Rebecca arrived home with the news, the children organized an impromptu celebration. They picked flowers from the yard, made a simple cake, and sang "Happy Birthday" to our new official family. "Now we're family on paper too," said Emma, hugging Rebecca. "We've always been family," corrected Rebecca. "Now it's just official." 6 months later, on a sunny summer afternoon, Rebecca was sitting on the porch of the house watching the children play in the yard. Emma was helping Ethan with a school project. The twins were planting seedlings in the garden. Charlotte was teaching little Tommy how to draw, and the baby, who was now crawling and babbling "Mama," was exploring the world under everyone's watchful eyes. The house was still a bit crooked, but it didn't matter. It was perfectly crooked to house a perfectly imperfect family that had found each other by chance and chosen to love one another. Marcus had left much more than a house and land for Rebecca. He had given her the chance to discover that multiplied love doesn't diminish, that family isn't about blood, and that a home doesn't need to be perfect to be happy. And Rebecca had discovered that sometimes we lose everything to gain exactly what we needed, without knowing we needed it. Marcus's letters were kept in a special box in the bedroom. Sometimes she would reread them, no longer with anger or resentment, but with gratitude. He had lied about many things, but he hadn't lied about one. She was capable of being an extraordinary mother. One Sunday evening, while putting the children to bed, Charlotte handed her a new drawing. It was the house, still crooked, but now with 9 human figures around it, the 7 children, Rebecca, and a small figure in the sky that clearly represented Marcus. "Now our family is complete in the drawing," explained Charlotte. Rebecca hung the drawing on the living room wall, alongside all the other expressions of children's art that documented the evolution of that unlikely family. And that night, before going to sleep, she whispered a prayer of gratitude for having inherited much more than a crooked house. She had inherited a whole future full of love, challenges, laughter, tears, growth, and the certainty that true family is the one we choose to build every day with patience, dedication, and lots of love. 5 years later, Rebecca was on the same porch, but the house had been completely renovated. It still had its quirky personality, but now it was structurally sound. Emma was 14 and helped the younger children with their homework. Ethan had discovered a talent for woodworking and made wooden toys to sell at the market. The twins were taking piano lessons at a music school in the city. Charlotte had overcome her shyness and become the class leader. Little Tommy attended soccer classes and dreamed of becoming a professional player. And little Hope, now 6 years old, was the family clown, always inventing games that made everyone laugh. Rebecca worked as an administrative supervisor at a veterinary clinic, earned a good salary, and had managed to provide financial stability for everyone. The house had 3 new bedrooms, a spacious living room, a modern kitchen, and even a small office where she handled the bills and helped the children with school projects. On that particular Sunday, a letter arrived from Victoria. After the entire legal process, she had moved to another state and lost contact. The letter was a sincere apology and an invitation for the children to meet their cousins, her children, who always asked about the country cousins. "What do you all think?" asked Rebecca, showing the letter to the children during dinner. "If Aunt Rebecca thinks it's safe, we could try to meet them," said Emma, who now had the maturity to understand complex family issues. "But she can't try to take us away again, right?" asked little Tommy, still vaguely remembering the confusion from years ago. "No, she can't," Rebecca assured. "Now we're an official family, no one can separate us." They decided to accept the invitation for a short visit during the school holidays. It was a reunion that was initially tense but gradually turned into reconciliation. Victoria had changed a lot, had undergone therapy, understood her mistakes, and genuinely wanted to make peace with the memory of her brother and the family he had left behind. The cousins got along well, and the families established a cordial contact without excessive intimacy, but respectful and caring. At the end of that day, driving back home, Hope asked, "Mum, why did Aunt Victoria fight with us before?" Rebecca thought of the most appropriate answer for a 6-year-old. Sometimes people do wrong things when they're scared or when they don't understand what's right. But people can change, they can learn, they can apologize, and try to be better. Like Daddy Marcus used to do with us when we messed up, just like that. Arriving home, while getting the children ready for bath and dinner, Rebecca reflected on how life had completely transformed. At 37, she had a large family, a house full of life, huge responsibilities, bills to pay, projects to plan. She also had 7 people who loved her unconditionally, 7 reasons to wake up happy every day, 7 constant sources of pride, worry, and joy. During dinner, Ethan announced that he had been accepted into a technical woodworking school in the capital with a full scholarship. It would be the first time one of the children would move away from home to study. "I'm not leaving forever," he assured, seeing the worried expressions on his younger sisters' faces. "I'm going to study to become a professional carpenter and then come back to work here in the region. Maybe I can even open a workshop." "I'm so proud of you," said Rebecca, and it was true. Seeing her children growing up, developing talents, making plans for the future, was one of the greatest joys of her life. After dinner, while the children played in the living room, Rebecca went to her room and opened the box where she kept Marcus's letters. There was one she reread from time to time, especially in moments like this, when she realized how beautifully life had turned out. "Rebecca, if you're reading this letter, it's because I'm already gone. I ask forgiveness for every lie, for every cowardice, for all the suffering I caused. But I don't ask forgiveness for leaving you, this wonderful family. They need you, and you need them even if you don't know it yet. Even if you... I love you forever, Marcus." He was right. She needed them as much as they needed her. Her single life in the big city had been comfortable, organized, predictable, but it had also been empty of greater purpose. There, in that house that was once crooked and now stood firm, she had found her place in the world. Not as the abandoned woman who needed to rebuild her life, but as the mother of 7 amazing children who needed love, guidance, and opportunities. Some nights, when all the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Rebecca would sit on the porch and talk to Marcus in her mind. She would tell him about each child's progress, about the challenges overcome, about the plans for the future. "They're growing up well, Marcus. Emma wants to be a teacher. She's always helping the younger ones with their studies. Ethan has your hands, just like you did. The twins are as different as day and night, but they love each other so much. Charlotte has lost her shyness and become a confident, talkative girl. Little Tommy has overcome his nightmares and is the happiest boy in the world. And Hope? She has your eyes, you know, and your easy laugh." In those moments, she felt a peaceful presence, as if Marcus knew that his family was in good hands. that his children had found the love he always wanted to give them. On the 10th anniversary of Emma joining the family, she had been the first child Marcus took in, they threw a special party. They invited all the neighbors, the families of the children from school, some teachers who had become friends. During the party, Mrs. Dorothy, now in her 80s but still sharp and caring, gave an emotional speech. I saw this family come from nothing. I saw Marcus, all alone, deciding he would care for children the world had forgotten. I saw Rebecca arrive here lost, not knowing she had found her true calling. And I saw these children grow up with love, security, opportunities they never would have had on their own. This house was crooked when it all began, but love straightened everything out. Not just the house, but the lives of everyone who lives here. The children applauded, the adults were moved, and Rebecca felt a deep pride not only for the family she had built, but for the community that had embraced this family. Later, when the guests had left and she was cleaning up the party mess, Emma approached her. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you ever regret it? Staying with us, I mean. You lost the life you had in the city. You lost the chance to marry again, to have your own children." Rebecca stopped putting away the plates and looked at Emma carefully. "Emma, you are my daughter. Ethan is my son. Olivia, Ava, Charlotte, little Tommy, Hope, they are all my children. Not by blood, but for real. And about marrying again. I already have a family. A big, loud, complicated, wonderful family. Why would I want to trade that? But you could have had an easier life. Easy doesn't mean better, my love. And I don't want an easy life. I want a life that matters, a life that makes a difference, a life full of love. And that's exactly what I have." Emma hugged Rebecca tightly. "I love you, Mom. I love you too, honey." That night, after everyone had fallen asleep, Rebecca realized she had spent years without thinking about the woman she was before coming to that crooked house. She didn't miss her old life. She never wondered what it would be like if she had made different choices. The truth was, she had become the person she was always meant to be. She just needed 7 orphan children and a crooked house to discover it. At the end of another ordinary day, after helping with homework, settling sibling fights, comforting scraped knees, reading bedtime stories, and checking that everyone was tucked in and safe in their beds, Rebecca looked in the bathroom mirror. She saw a 42-year-old woman with a few grey hairs, some laugh lines, hands calloused from work, and eyes shining with contentment. It was a version of herself that didn't exist before she found those children. It was the mother version, the complete version, the version that Marcus, even without fully knowing how, had seen inside her when he decided to leave her that impossible inheritance. And for the 1,000th time, Rebecca was grateful for having inherited much more than a crooked house. She had inherited the life that truly mattered. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this touching story of overcoming and maternal love. Do you believe Rebecca made the right decision by taking in these 7 children? Leave your opinion in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe.